Hello, everyone, and before we dive into today's incredibly important topic, I want to ask you for a small favor that would mean the world to me. If you find value in what we talk about today, if something clicks for you or helps you understand a difficult situation you or someone you love is facing, please consider subscribing to this channel and helping me reach 1,000 subscribers. Every single subscription tells me that this work matters, that having honest, science-based conversations about the hardest parts of relationships is making a difference in real people's lives. So if you appreciate what you hear today, please hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who might need to hear it. Your support allows me to keep creating content that digs deep into these tough topics without sugarcoating anything, and I am incredibly grateful for each and every one of you who joins this community. Now, I am a person who spends every single day helping people through some of the hardest moments in their relationships. I have even written a book about how to move forward when trust has been broken. And I have sat across from hundreds of people who are struggling with questions they never imagined they would have to ask themselves. Today, I want to talk with you about something very important. Something that does not get discussed nearly enough in the conversations around infidelity. We are going to look at the science, the actual way your brain works, to understand why an affair can feel like an addiction. If you have ever sat there wondering why you cannot stop, why this person lives in your head like a drug, why every rational thought tells you one thing, but your body and emotions pull you in a completely different direction, you are not alone. You are asking exactly the right question, and the answer is much more real and much more grounded in biology than you might think. Before we dive in, I want to say something very clearly because this is crucial and I do not want anyone to misunderstand what I am about to explain. Understanding why your brain is acting this way is not the same as saying the behavior is okay. Explaining how something works is never, ever the same as giving someone an excuse or a free pass. Knowledge is not permission, but it is very hard, nearly impossible really, to make a good choice about your life if you do not understand what is happening inside your own head. Most people who find themselves in an affair are trying to fight a battle against their own brain, their own neurochemistry, and they have never had anyone sit down and explain the rules of that battle to them. Their brain has essentially taken over the driver's seat, and they start to think that these incredibly powerful chemical feelings represent who they really are deep down, that this must be their true self finally emerging. Let's sit down together and look at what is actually going on beneath the surface. First, we have to talk about a brain chemical called dopamine, and this is absolutely foundational to understanding everything else. Think of dopamine as the chemical of wanting, of anticipation, of desire. It is what makes you feel excited and energized when you are looking forward to something good happening. Here is the big secret that most people do not know, the thing that changes everything. Dopamine does not hit its highest point when you finally get what you want. That might seem backward, but it is true. Dopamine actually goes absolutely crazy when you are just waiting for the reward or hoping it might happen. And here is the really tricky part that makes affairs so chemically powerful. Dopamine spikes even higher, reaches even more intense levels, when you are not sure if you are going to get the reward at all. The uncertainty itself is what supercharges the system. Does that sound familiar if you think about how an affair actually functions? People who study the brain, neuroscientists in labs with brain scanners and careful measurements, have found that rewards we cannot predict make our brains much more excited, much more activated, than rewards we can count on and expect. This is the exact same psychological trick that people who build slot machines in casinos use to keep people sitting in front of those machines for hours and hours, sometimes losing their rent money. I have talked about this principle in many short clips before, but today I want to really dig deep into how this works and why it matters so much for understanding affairs. When you are sitting at a slot machine, you do not win every single time you pull the handle. If you did, it would actually become boring pretty quickly. You win every once in a while, randomly, unpredictably. That sometimes, that maybe, That uncertainty is precisely what keeps you sitting there for hours, even as you watch your money disappear. Now, think carefully about how an affair is structured from the very beginning. Will they send me a text message today, or will they not? What are they doing right this second? Are they thinking about me, or have they completely forgotten about me while they are with their family? Can we sneak away to see each other this week, or will something get in the way? Every single time you get a message you were not expecting, or every time you manage to spend a stolen hour together that you were not sure would happen, your brain gets a much bigger hit of dopamine than it would ever get in a normal, steady, predictable relationship where you know your partner is there for you every evening. An affair is not addictive in spite of being messy and unpredictable. It is addictive precisely because it is messy and unpredictable. This pattern of sometimes rewards, of intermittent reinforcement, as psychologists call it, is literally the most powerful way to hook a human brain that science has ever discovered. An affair is built on this exact pattern from the very start, and your brain responds exactly the way it has been wired to respond over millions of years of evolution. Next, let's talk about how much our brains absolutely love new things, novelty, anything our system has not experienced before. Our brain's reward system reacts very strongly to anything it has not seen or felt before, because evolutionarily, new things might represent new opportunities or new resources. There is a famous researcher named Helen Fisher who used special brain scanning cameras to look at what happens in people's brains when they are first falling in love, in that early stage where everything feels magical and all-consuming. She found that the parts of the brain that lit up like Christmas trees were the exact same parts that light up for people who are struggling with serious drug habits, people addicted to cocaine or other powerful substances. Early romantic love looks just like a drug addiction on a brain scan. You literally cannot tell the difference by looking at the images. In a long-term marriage or a long-term partnership, that early wild brain chemistry slowly changes and shifts over many years. It transforms into something quite different called the attachment system, which is fueled by different chemicals like oxytocin and vasopressin. This kind of love is much calmer and steadier. It is deeper, like a quiet lake instead of a crashing waterfall, and it does not usually have those loud, bright fireworks going off constantly. It is the difference between the excitement of a new roller coaster and the comfort of coming home. But an affair drops you right back into that early firework stage, that brain state you maybe have not felt in 10 or 20 years. Your brain suddenly sees the huge difference between the quiet lake you have been living in and these new, overwhelming fireworks, and it thinks, this must be something incredibly special, something once in a lifetime. In reality, it is often just your brain reacting predictably to something brand new. The person is not necessarily special. The situation is just activating very old and very powerful brain circuits. Third, we have to look at how obstacles and barriers actually change our feelings in ways we do not consciously realize. People who study the psychology of relationships and attraction have observed something they call the Romeo and Juliet effect, named after the famous story of lovers kept apart by their families. This principle means that when there are walls or barriers in the way of a relationship, when society or circumstances tell you that you cannot have something, it actually makes you want the person more, not less. When something is hard to get, when you have to fight for it or hide it, your brain automatically thinks it must be extremely valuable. Because you cannot fully have this person whenever you want them, because every meeting requires planning and risk, your brain puts a very high price tag on them. The scarcity makes them seem precious. I want you to think about this honestly for a moment. Really sit with this idea. Part of the reason the affair feels like it is worth risking everything, worth potentially destroying your family and your life, is precisely because it is so hard to have. The fact that it is forbidden, off-limits, socially unacceptable, is not just a side detail or an unfortunate complication. It is actually one of the main things making the feelings so incredibly strong and intense. If this same person were easy to be with every single day, if you could see them whenever you wanted without any risk or excitement, the magic would start to fade pretty quickly. But the walls, the barriers, the forbidden nature of it all keeps the fire burning hot. You are not just attracted to the person, you are attracted to the whole dramatic situation. Fourth, we have to talk about the secret itself, and this is a very big piece of the puzzle that people often overlook. A researcher named Daniel Wegner did fascinating studies and found that when you have to actively hide your thoughts about someone, when you have to suppress thinking about them or talking about them, you actually end up thinking about them way more than you would otherwise. He called this ironic process theory. The very act of trying to keep a secret, of constantly monitoring yourself to make sure you do not slip up, makes that person stay right in the front of your mind all day long. It is like if I told you right now, do not think about a pink elephant. Suddenly, that is all you can think about. Your brain is constantly checking to make sure the secret is still hidden, making sure you have not accidentally said the name, making sure your phone is locked. And this mental work acts like a motor that keeps the obsession running constantly. The secret itself becomes the thing that completely takes over your thoughts, and you mistake this constant mental presence for proof of how important the person is to you. Finally, there is the stress of it all, and this is a factor that amplifies everything else. An affair keeps your body in a state of elevated stress, constantly full of stress chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline. You are always worried about getting caught, always planning the next meeting, always trying to figure out how to cover your tracks and manage two separate lives. This high-stress state actually makes people feel closer to each other in powerful ways. There is a classic finding in psychology where people who meet in scary or exciting situations, like on a shaky bridge or during an emergency, think they are much more attracted to each other than they really are. This happens because your heart is racing and your palms are sweaty from the stress and danger. But your brain looks at the person next to you and says, "My heart is beating fast and I feel so alive, so I must really be in love with this person." You give the person credit for the feeling, but it is actually just the adrenaline of the situation itself. The affair partner becomes associated with this intense feeling of being fully alive, and you think that means they are your soulmate. When you put all of this together, when you combine the uncertain rewards that spike dopamine, the newness that activates pleasure centers, the barriers that increase perceived value, the secrets that create obsessive thinking, and the stress that creates false intensity, you get an incredibly powerful neurochemical mix. It is genuinely about the strongest chemical cocktail your brain can ever produce naturally. So when people say an affair feels exactly like a drug, that they feel like an addict who cannot stop, they are not being dramatic or exaggerating for effect. They are telling the absolute truth about how their brain and body feel. The comparison to addiction is not metaphorical. It is quite literal on a brain chemistry level. But I want to be just as direct and honest about this next part. None of these chemicals, none of this brain science, takes away your power to choose or removes your responsibility. This chemical mix makes it much, much harder to say no and walk away, absolutely. It creates powerful urges and feelings that can feel completely overwhelming. But it does not make it impossible to choose differently. The science explains why it feels like you are being pulled by a strong tide, why it feels like you have no control. But you are still the one who ultimately decides whether to keep swimming in that direction or to turn around and head back to shore and start rebuilding your life. Understanding the neuroscience gives you knowledge, not an excuse. This matters tremendously for the choices you have to make going forward. If you are in the middle of an affair right now, you absolutely need to know that you cannot trust your own judgment about this relationship. You cannot accurately decide if this person is truly the love of your life or your soulmate, while your brain is essentially high on this powerful chemical cocktail. It would be exactly like trying to make a huge life decision about whether to quit your job or sell your house while you were drunk or high on drugs. The feeling of being totally sure, of knowing with complete certainty that this is real and special and worth everything, is actually just a symptom of the chemicals flooding your system. It is not reliable information about reality. This is also exactly why trying to stop an affair feels like real drug withdrawal for so many people. Anyone who has actually tried to end one knows how much it hurts physically and emotionally. There is shaking, obsessive thinking that will not stop, physical aches in your chest, inability to sleep or focus, and waves of intense pain. Many people start and stop many times, going back again and again, because the pain of the withdrawal is so severe they think they cannot survive it. But this pain is not proof that you lost your soulmate or made a terrible mistake by ending it. It is just your body and brain trying to adjust to not having those intense chemicals anymore, trying to return to a normal baseline. Like any other kind of withdrawal, it reaches a peak of intensity, and then it slowly starts to fade and go away. It just takes time and the determination to stay away long enough for your brain to reset. If you are the partner who was betrayed and hurt, and you are reading this or watching this, I genuinely hope it helps answer some of the questions that have been keeping you up at night. You might be asking, how could they do this? How could they risk our family? Have they completely lost their mind? Is this who they really are? The honest answer is that someone deep in an affair is making choices while their brain is in a very different neurochemical state than normal. They might not have understood what was happening to them at all. Knowing this might help you make sense of why your partner has been acting like a total stranger, like someone you do not even recognize. What many people do not realize until much later is that the intensity of an affair is mostly created by the situation itself, not by the actual compatibility or specialness of the person. If you took away all the secrets, removed the barriers, eliminated the uncertainty and the sometimes rewards, you would finally see what the relationship is really like underneath all that chemical intensity. Most of the time, the relationship does not survive that test. That is exactly why affairs very rarely turn into long, happy marriages when compared to relationships that started in normal circumstances. You are not alone in this struggle, and you do not have to carry this weight by yourself. Please subscribe to this channel to join a community where we talk about these difficult topics with honesty and compassion, and I will see you again very soon.